Okay. Hi. Yep, this is the Kingscrusher radio show, streaming to PlayChess and also YouTube. Let's mute here. Or not. Okay, so this week I thought we could look at some key British Chess Championship. Hi. There was a case for yeah, this is the Kingscrusher radio. Okay. Sorry, let's get rid of an echo. Okay, so Jonathan Hawkins was the eventual winner of the British Chess Championship this year by half a point, actually. I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at some of his games, and yeah, let's see what happened. I think some of his games are actually quite short, which I think might have helped his energy levels throughout the event. And so let's see one of these games, which could have, really showed his aggressive style of play. Actually, this particular one in round one against John Wager. So he was white against John Wager. So the British Chess Championships was held in Coventry, by the way, in England. D4 from Jonathan. Stops streaming. Sorry, hold on a sec. Okay, just one moment here. Oh, great, what's happened here? Swing back. Not really. Alright, now there should be a board now. Okay, I'm going to have to strip this off as usual. There should be a board now on YouTube. It should be okay. Board now. It should. There's on my preview board on YouTube. Yeah. Alright, okay, we're ready to start. I'm going to have to chop this off. Okay, evening all. This is the Kingscrusher radio show, 11th of August 2015. So as usual, this show is usually on Tuesdays at around 9 o'clock. Sometimes I might start a few minutes late, so actually I'm thinking of moving it to 9:05 just to make sure I can watch the end of Holby City. It's very dramatic, and get up to start streaming. But anyway, so 9:05 might be the future exact time. Around 9 o'clock Tuesdays, Kingscrusher radio show. We're going to have a look at the British Chess Championship, and in particular focus on Jonathan Hawkins. So he's a year been a Grandmaster, and it's the second time he's done really well at the British Chess Championship. He won it this year by half a point. Okay, so let's see his game against John Wager in round one. He kicked off with D4, and there was D5, C4, C6. So black is trying to play very solidly against his much higher rated opponent. Knight F3, E6. So that triangle, very reliable. A lot of super grandmasters are playing it nowadays. But actually, after Knight C3, we get the Dutch defense Stonewall. Now this is a slightly different, riskier proposition because the weaknesses on the dark squares. Now there's loads of different plans and stuff. I'm going to connect to live book here. Bishop f4 is actually the top played move, most popular, striking across the light squares here. Knight f6, e3. Black played now bishop e7. We have bishop d3. And it looks as though white might just be routinely casting kingside here, but actually has a much more aggressive intention, much more cunning, like a cunning fox. He actually played queen c2. This is actually the most popular move here, queen c2. And it looks as though, well, the queen and bishop, what are they doing? They're just hitting f5. They're not really, isn't f5 pretty secure? Isn't the structure quite secure? Is it though, this structure here in the center? Black, now the most common move is knight e4, and it seems to further blunt any ambitions, and black often wants to get this annoying knight on e4. But there is a move which has been getting a smaller edge for white here, and that was played here, g4. g4, flank strike. It's hitting this pawn chain pretty hard already. And as a bonus, of course, the white king hasn't castled yet. The white maybe could go over here. This g file could potentially be dangerous if it's ripped open. But of course, undermining the knight on e4 potentially. We see black now. Usually black plays queen a5 apparently, but it's meant to be quite good for white already. Black played knight a6. This has been seen before as well. So black is now threatening knight b4. Actually, I will put on a bit here as well. So knight b4 needs to be addressed before anything else. So a3 addresses that. And now here, black usually doesn't take on g4. This seems a little bit risky in principle to play f takes g4. It is a bit of a dangerous position anyway. Queen a5 might be interesting. Maybe taking here, but it seems as though black is under, you know, classic pawn chain pressure. But this move, f takes g4, carries with it quite a bit of risk. We see white now playing knight e5. So white has quite a few ideas actually. He could take here, obviously that's the main one, hitting h7 after. The defensive knight on f6 is absent, so h7 is going to be more vulnerable. The queen and bishop are actually beautifully lined up. We see that the knight actually retreating. Okay, so black's won this pawn, but at what cost? Now, potentially, there's a stability issue in the center though. If black was able to play c5, d4 is maybe a little bit more vulnerable. This might actually be quite interesting if black was able to get c5 in. White makes sure that that's not possible. White plays c5 here, stopping c5, and with that knight on e5, any attempt to undermine, I think this is knight takes c6. For example here, b6, I think we can just play knight takes c6. That's good for white. So this is quite a bind actually, and the knight looks a little bit misplaced there. White's in no rush to regain his pawn. Counterplay on the queen side has been minimized. The knight on e5 is a really nice piece here, and if white can get this pawn back, that g file, or this diagonal, they seem really dangerous here. Black tries to put this knight back in play now with knight b8. So potentially to try and challenge this great piece on e5. White now plays h3, very logical move. This bishop's hemmed in by its own pawn here. It's not, at move 13, this is not a great start position for a one-day game of chess. It doesn't look, it just doesn't bode well at all. I don't know what you guys think, but I think this looks like a massive advantage just after 13 moves. Black is around 2150, I think, FIDE rating, by the way, when I looked up my wager. What do you guys think? Do you think, you know, white has a big advantage here? This just looks really scary, this position, because also if you look at the coordination of white's pieces, they all seem very coordinated. Black's pieces, you know, look as though there's potential, you know, spectator pieces here. It looks as though even this rook, and the rook's going to have a party soon on the G and H files. I don't particularly like the look of black's position, even with potentially amazing resourceful play. It's not a position just visually at this moment that you think offers too much for black. He plays actually G3. Okay, so this does look like some sort of resourceful move. You know, what if white just, you know, white could just take this? Perhaps what's the actual punishment? It's a bit unclear. I think white's already, you know, loads better. Say here, white castle queen side, and it just looks fantastic. But interestingly, after G3, the move rook G1, encouraging black to keep his extra pawn up. But of course, ripping open this G file, it's like there's a message. There's a message here. You know, white is 2550 whatever, and black is 2150. But there's a continual message, I feel, from both sides. Well, unfortunately, the message for white, he already had the initiative being white, but he's saying, you know, give my pieces dynamic play, make my pieces fantastic. I'm all about piece quality. That seems, you know, that's the campaign slogan. All of white's pieces are really high quality. All of black's pieces are pretty bad. Thomas Villiers, my clubmate. You know, black has not played dynamically. You know, black has not got a dynamic aggressive position. In fact, you know, on FIDE rings, you want the higher rated opponent, you know, to suffer, you know, from pressure, from piece pressure, from dynamic play. It looks as though the lower rated opponent is suffering instead here already from this position. Thomas has said it looks like black is already busted. It is pretty horrific. Can black survive long even from this position? So he's a pawn up technically, but all the dynamic play is on white's side. So queen takes f2. We've got this lovely g file now. The queen can come here crudely but effectively. How you know, how's black stopping any of this stuff? White can castle, just double rooks. All of white's pieces are a fantastic team, coordinating very well. And look at black's pieces. So anyway, so knight h5 was played here. Is black in any position to threaten anything? As it turns out, black does have a threat because the white king's in the center. Black is threatening at the moment bishop h4. So even from a seemingly miserable position, of course, you're going to watch out. So bishop h4 might be annoying because, you know, if this bishop moves, we've got this pin, you know, we're going to take the queen or whatever. So the queen moves out of the way actually here with queen c2. Let's have a look at this position actually. If castles, I can't imagine that black's crawled out of it, but actually, if we look at castles, the engine indicates that black might not actually be too terrible, unbelievably. In this position, it looks as though black is not completely busted. But anyway, this move to get against bishop h4 seems very strong. Queen c2, it's actually the engine's second top choice, actually positively inviting black to play this check to disrupt white from castling. But it is putting immediate pressure on that h7. That's the kind of weakness of the last move. So the weakness of the last move, by the way, I'm going to tell you something really ridiculous about it. I've talked about it many times in videos, but I was at a packed car park today, and you know, you can go round in circles in a packed car park for hours. It's only when a car's like leaving, yeah. So a weakness of the last move, it's like the position might be in total equilibrium. It's like a packed car park jammed. You're waiting for one weakness, one parking slot to become available. And sometimes a strategy is just to watch the people coming out of the building, going to their car, follow them, because that's the weakness of the last move. And here, The knight is like someone, you know, going to the car. It's got parking spaces available. It's h7. If we just look at this move h7, that is a weakness of the last move. It's like this is a packed car park. Well, white's in a great position anyway, but the weakness of the last move, technically, it's left h7. It seems, in a way, even though it seems outrageous to allow the check, it is exploiting that very last move. You know, the parking space that's been just now available, hitting h7. What does black do? Well, he throws in the check, but does that actually help when there's really, you know, great coordinated pressure now on the g file and hitting h7? It seems, in a way, if this move is good, it's scientifically good. It's actually the very last, you know, change that's been made. What's the downside of knight h5? Tactically, yeah, black's, you know, bishop h4 would seem as though it's, you know, a nuisance at least. So he plays it, but he's still left with this horrible pressure. After king d2, what does black do? Well, isn't f4 now weak? Has white misplaying this or playing this recklessly? Why can't black now? Well, he is faced with this horrible battery, but he does actually take on f4, thinking, you know, maybe he's not going to be mated or something. Maybe this f file is significant, this coordination of rook and bishop. What about these three though? This guy in particular is still hemmed in. So white takes on h7, king h8, and now we see e takes f4, and it's clear here that okay, the king's on d2, but white has achieved the aim of shredding apart quite a few more light squares. The bishop even might be a tactical target, and certainly not rook takes f4. There's like knight g6 check, forking the rook and king. This is actually not just taking here. This is good, but there's actually a forced mate in 12 here. Check. Apparently, forced mate in 12. Rook takes g7 is a forced mate in 12, technically, by the way. But anyway, so yeah, black doesn't want to take on f4. He plays queen f6, and it still looks as though, okay, there's only three pieces, but are they coordinating? Well, this is defended now, rook g4, which also, of course, facilitates just doubling the rooks. Why not? So the white squares have been pierced. Black is still being forced to carry this slogan, I'll give you a bit of material. He probably didn't want to. The dynamics, the aggressive piece quality is all on white's side still. This slight bit of optimism black might have had with the king on d2 is more than offset, it seems, technically. Well, look at all these pieces swarming around black's king. Black plays now. Well, it's very, very difficult to parry numerous threats here. Knight g6 check is one. Rook g1, rook takes h4 is even threatened here, because if queen takes, knight g6, winning the queen. There's numerous threats. Black plays bishop f2. And here, I'm not even sure what black is actually threatening just yet. White plays now. He's got actually a few different ways of probably winning this position, including knight g6. He just plays bishop d3, letting his d pawn go, potentially. But rook f1, you know, to protect and smash through later. Black took on d4 here and resigned. But can we come back? Why did black resign? Can we come back to the car park scenario? Again, it's like a packed car park, but one car has left a slot. The bishop has just left h4. That's the car, that's the space that's just come available for a car that you want to park, right? What does white do here? Believe it or not, I've given a bit of a clue. So that was the last move. What does white do here? So white's play, if I give you 20 seconds, white's play. Which is the most crushing move here? Anyone? Is there a more than 30-second delay on streaming at the moment? Seems to be a big delay. Oh dear. I don't know if YouTube has increased the delay. Oh, that's a shame. If it has been increased. On Play Chess, has anyone answered this question? There's a few on Play Chess. Yeah, Rook H4. The car, the car park, the space that's been made available is Rook H4 actually. And if that would be an absolutely killing move here, if Queen takes, then we fork the Queen and King, and that's just winning. And if here, I think we just got check. I thought we might have like a forced mate almost with bishop here, but actually black just takes this, and that would refute that. Whoops. And there's no mate. No, got to be a bit careful here. No, black is busted because of knight g6 check here, which forces the win of the queen. Queen takes, queen takes. That's just winning. So yeah, it's not all about just weakness of the last moves. What white had great dynamic, position here. Is king only temporarily inconvenienced, but the big factor is all like the hemmed in pieces and white's pieces all coordinating. So quite a crushing game, and one which also in a long tournament over 11 days is an energy conserving game as well. It's a very, very useful energy conserving game for one of the top seeds of the tournament. So that was in round one. Let's have a look at another game now. I hope you got something from that. So it was a great way to combat the Dutch Stonewall formation. Not routinely casting kingside, but aggressive, g4, which is also the concept of g4 is cropping up over the years. It's an increasingly popular idea to destabilize, central control away from the opponent. But here it damaged king safety, it undermined pawn chain, it opened files, it increased piece coordination of the white pieces. So let's look at another game. Now this again is very interesting. This next one. So Marcus Osborne, we're going to flip the board, was playing in round 2, I believe, Jonathan Hawkins. Now Marcus Osborne is a very dangerous player, 2190. I've played him sometimes in the past. I think he smashed me once at Sutton Library years ago. Very, very, very good player. He does consistently well quite often in the British Championships over the last few years and other tournaments. So let's see, d4, knight f6 from Jonathan Hawkins, c4, g6. We're not going to get King's Indian actually, we get the Grunfeld. This is quite handy actually for a King's Indian player to know probably, to be less easy to prepare against, to play the Grunfeld instead of going into a King's Indian sometimes. We have c takes d5, knight takes d5. Very theoretical, I think, much sharper though. You really need to know your stuff more to play the Grunfeld for both sides, I feel. So e4, knight takes, b takes, bishop g7. And quite a rare bird move is actually played in this position. Fairly rare bird. Most moves are like got thousands of games to them, like knight f3, bishop c4. These have all got thousands of games. Bishop e3, well that's over 1,000. Slightly rarer bishop b5, but this one's even rarer. 442 games in live book. The check. What is this about this check? Interesting. So black played knight d7. Should he be worried about this? Knight f3. I think one idea is to kind of create this binds on the position. Black castles, bishop g5. The thing that disturbs me slightly about this way of playing for white is it looks like Fischer's game of the century, where Fischer was 16 years old and smashed up. Was it Donald Byrne? It reminds me a little bit about with that game, because queens, when they come out, as many people know, you don't bring out the queen out too early because they're so easily subject to harassment. But here, okay, it's done a job. It's put the knight on maybe a less than ideal square for hitting hard the d4 square later with knight c6. So obviously there's some great cunning idea behind this queen a4 check. It's disruptive in some respects. That black's d4 pressure has been stymied. That's a Paul Georgiou word, stymied a little bit. I think that might be appropriate. Anyway, black goes for the d4 square anyway with c5 here. I think it's probably the most common move. Let's check the live book. Yeah, it's the most common move. We have queen a3. We've got this kind of bind on e7. This kind of is it a nuisance? Well, the bishop's kicked. It goes to e3. So black's freer potentially to play this about whatever. But black just maintains the pressure now on the center. And I think black's position, again, he doesn't mind about white is in hardly a position to wreck his center, but it seems black's got a really decent position out of the opening if he's fianchetting both bishops. But actually technically white seems better from an engine perspective here at the moment. Rook d1, queen c7, but black's pieces, they don't seem to have any problem. White's being invited to occupy the center. And I've often hate playing the white side over the years because it's like you're nannying your pawn center from destruction at any point. And this game does not change that message for me about the white side of the Grunfeld. It's like this center's got to be like, you've got to have great caution what you do with your center here. It's like subject to scrutiny from black with the double fianchetto eyeing your center here. So there's double fianchetto eyeing the center. You've got to be very, very careful what you're doing here. So we have d5. The trouble is, space scaling is a double-edged sword. It creates weaknesses, it creates vulnerabilities. Here, the e5 square, of course, has been slightly compromised. And it's like black's play here is saying, come forward more. I'm just going to smash your center to bits, though. And knight e5 simplifies a bit and weakens white a bit more on the dark squares. It seems quite a logical move. It's weakening white on the dark squares, but it's encouraging white, for tempo gains to try and come forward in the center, maybe later. Immediately threatening queen takes c3. That's dealt with c4. It looks as though white might be tempted later for f4 and e5. But here we see the move f5, actually, f5, and perhaps white should be satisfied with the slight space he's got at the moment and just take this pawn off to reduce liability. It's often easier to attack targets rather than leave targets, and you see this in political campaign elections where the leading side is under attack and all the other parties have to do is criticize all their policies. Here with the Grunfeld, black is just waiting for white to have some weaknesses and just like criticize and attack. He's not aiming for space, he's just wanting white to come forward and then lose all his center pawns. This is typical Grunfeld psychology. It's destructive, it's hyper modern. You get your opponent to commit their position and you want to smash it up later. So here it seems so tempting, come at me, f4 and e5, so tempting. Okay, so white does oblige, f4, gaining the tempo. Yeah, the engine's saying to take here actually, which relinquishes some of the center occupation. But white here apparently, even though this looks a bit terrifying to a human because of potentially f4 and f3, apparently this is okay. Apparently this is okay for white. Let's have a quick look. f4, bishop d2. This looks a little bit on the terrifying side, but apparently this is okay. Rook fe1. This position, I think we've got defensive resources against being mated on g2. So this might actually be okay for white. It might. But what black gets what he wants. He gets white to play f4. This is slightly weakening, perhaps. Slightly weakening. So we have queen c3 check, takes, king e2, and yeah, the centre is really subject to scrutiny here. And you might think, well, hold on a sec, what about e5? Isn't e5 actually possible here? Soon. Well, that is, if white gets in another move, he'll play e5, right? But can you guess what black does, which casts doubt actually on white's centre here? It casts a lot of doubt on white's centre in this position. Black to play. How would you try and smash up white's centre here? You kind of tease this move out of white to play f4, as though he's going to play e5 and squash you like a fly, right? So, but what does black do at this moment? Yeah, anyone? Thomas has got a suggestion. I've probably seen the game, I don't know. Thomas Villiers actually played in the British Championship, by the way, and you got 6, didn't you, Thomas? And you gained quite a few rating points. Fantastic performance, 6. I think the highest I got was like 4.5. So yeah, I played in it twice, but one was qualifying, one was just transfer, I think. So Thomas Villiers played actually in the British Chess Championship, and he's in the stream on YouTube here. I don't know if he actually saw this game while it was being played, but yeah, the move that smashes white's centre here is e6. Wow, dear oh dear. It's really hitting the centre hard now. We saw in round 1 pawn chain being hit hard by Jonathan Hawkins. Here he's hitting a pawn chain hard again. What does white actually do here? If he takes here, probably best is actually g takes. We saw this horrible pressure on d5. If it takes, we just put this and we get fantastic rooks, and we're starting to get pins and loose pieces emerging. That's not very nice. So yeah, white played rook c1, and black just proceeds to smash up the centre now. F takes e4, bishop takes e4, e takes d5, and yes, there's pieces being exposed behind the skeleton. This is bad news. These pieces are slightly loose, and the king's on e2. It's not ideal. If white goes for the opposite colour bishops, I don't think that really helps here to play this. Black's just better here. And this pawn might be subject to target later at some point. Pawns on 9 squares. So c takes d5, and we have rook a e8, not bothering to move the bishop. Yeah, just this horrible pressure. It's another, I've got to say, it's a disgusting position to start off with. It's not a fighting position that you want in a one-day game. I don't know if Thomas agrees with that. Is white's position horrible? White position horrible? If I give you 20 seconds, I just think it is. I just think this has gone wrong. This queen a4 check surprise has gone wrong. The surprise here now is unfortunately that black's equalised. And you don't want black to equalise this easily, probably, as white. You want to have some pressure, some dynamic play, some things for black to worry about. What is black worrying about here? And so king f3 was played. Yeah, actually Thomas is pretty hyper modern as well, by the way. He's played Alekhine defense and provokes and create weaknesses, and had a great time after exploiting weaknesses. It's a great thing to do. Yeah. So here, bishop, lovely move maybe in some respects, was played bishop e5 tactical. Might not actually be technically the strongest move, apparently. engine friends think for some reason kicking the rook first and then going to f6. I don't know what the idea of this is. Maybe g5. Okay, but anyway, bishop e5 seems to have some point of g5 anyway, putting pressure on f4. So we have h4 from white, and here, although it seems to be designed against g5, g5 might be a reasonable move in this position. It wasn't played, but it might technically be a reasonable move anyway. For example, takes here, bishop takes, and I don't think black is in such severe king safety trouble in this position, and it's actually in this position white's falling to bits tactically, it seems, with bishop takes d5, potentially hanging rook, pins piece on here, pins piece on here. White's actually falling apart tactically. For example, takes, king takes with this pin, and there's going to be the exchange up after g3. But anyway, yeah, so g5 is actually technically possible, but black just plays king g7, and it's still horrendous, you know, pressure that black has. g3, and we have bishop f6. So these bishops are slightly loose. Black just needs to just threaten to double, and these bishops are are embarrassed. They're just really embarrassed. g4 was played, so white still seems to be attracted to trying to gain some sort of space, but black is now attracted to these pieces which are potentially quite loose. Rook e7, so he's just going to double, and you know, look at these bishops. They're poking at the central squares here, across the central squares, the 4 key central squares, which we learned in primary school. The bishops are both actually hitting the 4 classic central squares, and the rooks are just from an aesthetic point of view. Black's pieces really want to do what they're doing, exactly what they're doing to the white position here. Central pressure against loose pieces, against the king. So we have g5, and this is just, there's a brilliant move here that's played. Maybe white didn't bank on this. Maybe white, I don't know, hoped for something like bishop d4, and in which case white's position actually repairs itself quite well. Takes, for example, takes, and actually, you know, white's actually okay here because some king safety issues have been raised. It's not about the center anymore. You know, black's king is exposed. But no, unfortunately, bishop d4 wasn't played. Black plays actually a mega accurate move here. Black to play. Can you spot what black plays here? So it does become about the loose pieces and not about black's king after this next move, but potentially about white's king instead. That's the subject that black wants to raise. White's king, white's loose pieces, not black's king. So what does black play here? Can you guess? Alright, yeah, black played a really tactical, mega accurate move, rook fe8, just letting bishop drop, because, you know, he's hitting these loose pieces, right? And you might think, well, hang on, is this really loose? Isn't there rook c4? That doesn't have to move to lose e3, does it? We have g takes f6, king takes, and there's a slight snag here. Can you see why white played rook cd1? Instead of rook c4, I'm hoping you spot there's a slight snag with rook c4 as a way of defending this position. This wasn't played, but what would black play in this position? black play in this position? I don't know if they've increased the stream delay. I'm sorry about this, but I think at least 20 seconds probably, because on my preview it's quite a while back. Alright, yeah. Okay, well done, Thomas. Yeah, rook takes e4, crashes through, you know, because here, this is really embarrassing. Pin and win. Yeah, it's horrible. So yeah, white played rook cd1, and then rook takes e4. Okay, so threatening this bishop. Bishop c1, but now great position for black. The rook's already active. Okay, threatening takes, and also rook d8. We have rook h2, defending that one at least. But then the other one, the other threat is used. If parry one threat, you can use the other if you've got two potential threats, rook d8. So it's one fundamentally an issue for white, that is king sitting on a light square. It's a light square bishop. It's a horrible pin on the pawn. Okay, so how to defend that? Difficult. Rook here. This is just a cruel, really tactically cruel game, and reflects actually all my insecurities playing white against the Grunfeld are encapsulated in this game, actually, about nannying the centre, about it being blown up, about you playing some evil tactical resourceful player that, you know, has great fun tearing your centre to bits with amazing tactics. So black to play here. What does black play? Horrible resource. Black to play here. Can you see? Horrible. Cruel. Can you see? So cruel. Oh, it's so cruel. It's so cruel because it involves even a king as part of the combination. How many combinations in the middle game involve a king? It's unbelievable. Rook takes d5. Unbelievable. Because after rook takes d5, king e6. Unbelievable. Sick. What does white do here? Yeah. Ouch. He gives up this pawn, check, to take this one. But black is now, you know, he's going to be like 3 pawns up. Check. He takes another pawn. He's like 3 pawns up. After h5, rook a3 check, white just threw in the towel. So there's everything I hate about the Grunfeld in this game. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, you don't want to. If you're going to play against some Grunfeld player, I don't know. I think I don't know. You've got to be careful with your systems to gain an advantage. But this was, the centre was totally blown to bits here in this game. Horrible, cruel game. Anyway, let's carry on to another round. So, did you guys get anything from that? Now in round right, is the board back? Hello? Okay, sorry, just to recap, sorry, in this is round 5, Jonathan Hawkins was playing Glenn Flair. So it started e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. So white play here. White to play, no, white to play. What does white play? Anything exciting comes to mind here as a move? What would you play which is quite exciting and not too terrible an opening? Okay, sorry, I shouldn't really test you on openings. So if you wanted to play what has been played over the centuries, that's got over 79,000 games just in live alone. Bishop c5. Now knight b3 was played. Bishop b6. And just fundamentally, you know, the bishop's here, right? And you can imagine if this bishop's got a pin, how annoying would that be with the bishop there? From a theoretical angle, let's just keep track of this game. White plays knight c3, and black does actually invite a potential pin with knight f6, but I'm not sure it's any good here, or it might just be equal to pin that knight with bishop g5. It's actually the second most popular move. Queen e2 is the most popular move. On bishop g5 can be kicked immediately, and it shouldn't be a problem. This position in black can actually react violently to that bishop pin. So yeah, bishop g5 is not as common as queen e2, just delaying the suspense of this pin. d6, bishop e3, as though there's no real interest in pinning this knight now. Maybe bishop e6, white castles queenside, and it looks as though that rook's having a good time on that d file, that semi-open file. Queen e7, very well trodden territory. White usually plays f3 here apparently. g3 was played. Now, interesting. Black usually castles in line but 10 games compared to 3 with castling kingside, right? And this again reflects, like the Grunfeld game, it crystallizes, underlines a major insecurity about this position. Yeah, major insecurity about this whole position. If black castles queenside or kingside, about this pin, how annoying would it be? Is it just kickable? Is the bishop just kickable if black castles kingside? This is rarely played, right? At the moment, does bishop g5 actually do anything? Hold on a sec. It wasn't played here. f3 was played. Does bishop g5 actually do anything? Probably not. h6? And what do we do here? Can we do anything clever? If we try to do anything clever, probably it can be snapped up. Fishing pole. Does it work here? Works better in bullet games. Knight g4. Then what? How does white proceed the attack? It doesn't look as though it should do anything here. Right? We can't get on this h file to mate because knight f2, this would be annoying. I don't think this h file attack is going to work. And also black's now threatening queen takes g5. Doesn't really work that well, right? Bear that in mind. f3 is played. Okay, f3 is played. Seems logical because black's semi-open file is against the e4 here, prophylaxis. Rook fd8, as though black might be interested in liberating his position by taking maybe an d5, liberating the position. But here it is, in this exact position. What is it about this bishop here? Is this pin annoying? It is used here. Bishop g5 in this position. The nuances here are slightly different. They really are. White's not just secured e4, he secured that g4 square. So black, is he able to kick this bishop here? Because if he isn't, this is really annoying with that bishop kind of misplaced in a way. So h6, but guess what white plays here? So white play in this position. What does white play in this position? 20 seconds. It prevents liberation, by the way, the pin. It's so annoying. It's controlling d5. If black ever wanted to liberate, you really want to get rid of this pin. h4, in the nuances of this particular position, you might have been dissuaded from h4 as a concept just because of the previous position. But actually, in the nuances here, things are quite different, it seems. h4 was actually played. The engine, of course, still thinks this is unsound, by the way. The engines do think, well, the engine Fritz thinks this is unsound. It thinks black can just take this and not be mated. With HG, well, at a certain depth, I'm going to qualify that, at a certain depth, it thinks it doesn't see any danger. Knight H5, this kind of slows down white's H-file slaughter, I guess, because if knight here, then that's just asking for slaughter, right? F4, followed by queen H2 or queen H5. So that defends G5. If here, queen H2 then, threatening mate. That doesn't look good. But apparently there's a computer defense. Well, there's two, knight G4, knight H5. Now if takes, G6. So the rook is forced to move. Queen takes G5. I don't know how well this holds up. This computer defense. This is absolutely, black would have to be as greedy as a pig to follow this computer defense, which apparently is not involving king G7, because in king G7, queen G2, white's still better with knight D5, and this queen's subject to harassment. No, but actually, if black apparently takes on G3, yeah, what human would kind of do this? But apparently black is technically okay here. This is hard to believe in some respects, but in other respects, yeah, maybe, you know, the pieces have taken up squares, the bishop's on G1, the queen stopping H2. How easy it is to make the king here. Queen D2, punting for queen H6. Queen takes. This is a very calmless defense. Knight D5, queen G7. Where's the mate? But anyway, black's not a computer. It can't see 6 million positions every like millisecond. So funny enough, didn't play this defense with knight H5. Funny enough, he just ignored the whole thing. Yeah, so, you know, we just want to play some simple stuff of our limited calculation, right? So he plays actually bishop takes B3, which strengthens control, of course. The knight was controlling D4. It strengthens control of that D4 square to be able to harass the queen and use that D4 square. But he has left this pin, right? A takes, and now Grunfeld plays knight D4. The queen shouldn't really go to H2 here, because then there's knight takes F3, right? But goes to G2 to nanny the pawn, yeah, protect the pawn, and still maintaining this horrible pin. And the queen's still kicking around for an H-file attack, in case this fishing pole kind of thing is taking this contraption. Which, by the way, must be the biggest point scorer ever in bullet chess, the fishing pole. I mean, seriously, how many hundreds of games I've won just in the last 7 days, probably, with the fishing pole construction, usually with a knight. It's just a quick way of mating on the H-file. But here, this is a serious game, right? So, you know, black's not going to be duped into this H-file checkmate attack, surely. So, how dangerous is it to take the bishop here? It does seem pretty dangerous. He actually played C6. If he takes, H takes, how does black actually defend now? Does this kind of defense work? Probably not. This one, there's knight D5 actually hitting the queen and the game actually, probably, because bishop C4 now threatening knight F6. Horrible. Yeah. queen e8, that'll be knight f6, that'll be end of game, weakening f6, be fatal there. So yeah, that doesn't work, but knight g4 might be a better try. Or again, knight d5. Yeah, black has major issues here. If he takes f4, and if the queen moves, I think we are going to get, well, knight e7 check. And if the queen tries to go out of the way, well, where can the queen go? Can't go anywhere. So yeah, it starts to be really horrible for other reasons technically in this position to take that, right? So he plays c6. And with, you know, extinguishing this knight d5 stuff, yeah. So maybe he will take without all this knight d5 nonsense hitting him, yeah. But white reinforces now this piece sack with f4, f4. Again, we have to calculate, you know, how does HG work or not work? Black played knight e6 in this position. If HG, we open up rook, of course, for the mating attack. Apparently, black is not doing too well here. If g6, okay, we haven't got the knight d5 killer move, but takes here. Instead, this is just a nasty position to have. I mean, it's good for white. This position here is just good for white. It's just better for white. And if the knight moves it, I think black just gets slaughtered. Knight here, queen h3, threatening mate. If knight here, yeah, black's just getting slaughtered. It's horrible. So yeah, black plays knight e6. He's not accepting this bishop. It's been a long feature of this game now, this bishop pin, and take it or not take it, to take or not to take. Bishop c4. What is white actually threatening with bishop c4? He's controlling the d5 square positionally. If black wanted to liberate with d5, the dream of d5 is being put on hold here for quite some time. We see black playing bishop d4. This might not have helped black cause. White takes on e6 now. Forcing black to do something with the bishop. He's got a hanging piece. Yeah. Bishop e3 check. Here. F takes e6. and now we have queen h3. Queen h3. White is actually with queen h3 threatening things like e5. That pin is nasty. He couldn't. I don't. E5 in this position. Apparently it doesn't work so well in this position after hg. This position doesn't work. It's still good for white. It doesn't work so well. But yeah, e5 is like an imminent threat here after queen h3. Really quite powerful. So here, it's also, of course, spelling out this mate or stuff on the h file. So again, if we look at in this position hg, yes, it looks pretty bad. What does black do if knight here? This is a classic way to mate actually. There is a mate with that, but there's a much quicker one here which is worth knowing about, and I have actually used this myself in bullet games. What makes queen h8 more effective in here? If white's play here, what would you do in this position to make queen h8 more effective, to guard the exits of the king, the exit routes of the king? White's play here, it's a classic to know about. After sacking a piece, that moment of calmness and coldness and cruelness, where you don't rush in with the checks, but instead you do something even more effective than, you know, go in with your checks. So what do you do here? You want to exit, you know, get those exit routes extinguished instead. So the way to do that is g6. Guard the exit, right? Makes queen h8 the major threat, right? And it's black can't defend this position. So anyway, so yeah, of course, you know, the fishing pole can't be taken here, of course, in this particular position. So king f7, the king is like making a run for it now. Oh dear, this doesn't look too good. King f7, because we've still got this horrendous pin, isn't it? And white executes based on that pin the move e5. Technically it seems g4 is also pretty strong, threatening this bishop, and if the bishop moves, then either e5 or even this is apparently a strong position. It's crashing through on black's king. But anyway, so king f7. We have e5 here. It looks pretty logical and strong as well. We have finally black ages. Let's have a right. All right, we're back again. Okay. So this is a really crushing position, this final position. So he made the Scotch game a lethal weapon of choice here. He made this pen really dangerous on the king side, it seems, tactically. So yeah, e6 is falling, and with that black's position. Okay, should we go on to another game? Got some issues here technically. I'm wondering if I should leave it till next week, but mind you, I don't know. Have a look at it on the round. There's another quite shortish game in round 7 which might be interesting to check out. Let's have a look at the game in round 7. So in round 6, after this victory, by the way, he actually lost to Danny Gormani, Grandmaster Danny Gormani, the Gormalizer, sometimes nicknamed, very dangerous Grandmaster. So, but in round 7, recovered with this game. Let's have a look at this game. Round 7. Hawkins against Hill. Just going to get the PGN. So, Jonathan Hawkins. Oh, I pasted it to the wrong place there. Right. Okay. Hawkins against Alistair Hill, who's another, I think, 2100-ish player. D4, and it's fascinating because here we get the white side of the Grunfeld. So G6, knight C3, D5. So Jonathan Hawkins is playing against his own pet system, the Grunfeld. So what does he do? Knight F3, Bishop G7. Sorry, Knight F3, Bishop G7. And here, quite a surprising move. It's like like the 7th most popular choice is played, which is H4. It is a surprise move, H4. I think my Blitz game of today actually had something like this. It didn't work out for me, but I think it does take the opponent out of a lot of opening theory, and it seems in some ways just a weakening move, you know, weakening G4. What is this kind of a sort of hack attack move? But yeah, how does black react? He plays C6. That seems very logical. bishop g5. So not going in with h5, but bishop g5. And black plays what seems to be a very logical move to take this c pawn. We sort of gambit here. e4. So it's going to get his pawn back. So black protects that pawn. e5, knight d5. So what's the relevance of h4 here? Well, it actually shows its relevance once the knight leaves, protecting h5. It shows its relevance now, h5. And you might think, well, isn't this h file attack good for just peeling open the h file? It's actually dual purpose, as this shows now. This game continuation after bishop g4, h6 just gaining more dark square control and causing black's pieces to stumble over each other, denying black the ability to easily castle. So white's gaining some very interesting stuff here. Right, is this an interesting game? Yeah, for h4. Let's type that. An interesting game of h4. Very interesting position, keeping the options open, not just to peel open the h file, but to cramp black. And of course there's this pin at the moment on this pawn, which is significant potentially. If we can get a knight to d6, that would be embarrassing. We see bishop e2, which unpins the knight and also prepares something like this for knight d6. We see knight d7, knight d2, yes, hitting the bishop. It looks as though, okay, bishop e6. Is this easy to parry? Probably it is in this position. Knight here wasn't played. Although knight d6 is a threat, black might have f6 apparently. Of the takes. This is apparently might be okay for black, this position. No, white actually takes f6 as a resource out of the equation here with this next move. What does white play in this position? You know, like the g6 move we've just seen, you want to sometimes take away resources from the opponent. So in principle, yes, it's a pretty juicy idea, right? But unfortunately, this is like throws cold water, ice water over the whole thing. f6. But how can we stop this f6? White to play here, cunning move. White to play here, cunning little move. Can you see what white plays? Yeah, it keeps relentless pressure on the position. Bishop g4. There's no f6 without losing e6. Bishop takes g4 is played. I was threatening horrendous structural damage. Queen takes g4. We still got this congestion stuff. And it looks as though can't black break out of this now with f6. He plays f6. But fantastic move now. Really, really annoying is played in this position. If, yeah, white to play here, white to play, great stuff, great tactical move which changes the entire picture of this position. What does white play here? Fantastic move at move 15, so early on in the game. So white to play here. What does he do? My iPhone's got it. I got bored on my iPhone. What is my sanity check? Preview. Golden Bennett. I'm using my iPhone as a test bed with this stream still being alive. Yeah, more time to think about the position. There's an upside to it. Okay, the iPhone has it. Thank God. Alright, yeah, Queen B6 was played. So not having that piece sack. E takes F6. Knight 5 takes F6. Now white plays bishop takes after knight takes. Still going in for this knight d6 with knight e4. Okay. Queen takes d4. This is really bad news because of rook d1 with knight d6 to follow. That's horrendous. So actually knight takes e4 was played here. Knight takes e4. Threatening not just knight d6 now, but knight f6 with mate in 2. The king tried to evacuate here. If queen takes d4 here, rook d1 is still crushing. So if takes, actually probably the most incisive. This is mate in 4. Apparently this position. Here, for example, knight c7. So that's all pretty crushing. So king d8 was played. And now knight c5. The mate. Black parried that. But now d5 rips open this file position. D takes c6 and rook d1 is threatened. Black's in